All right, my friends, I have a very exciting guest today, a personal friend of mine. I am very excited to welcome Blair Sharp to Sober Stories. Thanks for joining us, Blair.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, give us, for those who don't know you, for those who aren't familiar with sobriety activists, give us the rundown of you, who you are, where you are, what you do, who you do life with, all of the kind of high notes, and then we'll get into the storytelling in a minute.
Sure. So my name is Blair, and I live in Minnesota. I've been born and raised in Minnesota, and I am a wife. Almost 7 years with my husband, married. Anyways, I think we've been together for maybe like 11 or 12. I don't know at this point, but
Isn't it
a
funny
long
that,
time. Yeah.
that we counted at that? It's like, yeah, we've been married for like 8 years, but like I grew up with this person.
Yeah, right. You've known him for that long. Yeah. So we have one son, and his name is Caius, and he will be 6 in a few months. And he'll be going to kindergarten this fall. So we're kind of busy with him. He keeps us busy. And I work full time right now as a psychometrist. And I'll explain that a little bit because no one ever knows what that means. Basically, I test people's thinking. So I have a patient, and then I give them memory and attention tests from 2 to 4 hours. So I just sit across the table from them and ask them questions, have them remember things, do things like that. So I've been doing that for 8 years. Work at the Mayo Clinic here in Rochester, Minnesota.
Okay.
And
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. No, yeah. And then I do a little bit of writing on the side. And of course, I post on Instagram and share my story and things like that. And my handle is sobriety activist. And I've been doing that since almost a year and a half only.
Yeah.
So not very long.
Now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I feel like,
well, I don't think it's that long. It seems like a long time, but like how much it's grown in that short amount of time is like, I still don't understand it.
Well, I was just about to say, you do just a little bit of writing. I feel like I've read some really, really impactful pieces of yours in a lot of different publications. So congratulations for that. And
yeah, thanks.
I think you and I have a similar ethos in the respect for storytelling and the power of telling our stories and what that does for other people and the doors that it opens for other people when they read a story of yours in Medium or wherever you have your stories published and they see themselves for the first time and they say, wow, I didn't know there was anybody out there doing it like I do. So tell us your story. What is the story of Blair? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah. So, and I agree, before I lose track of that thought, I totally agree with what you just said. And I think a big thing of it, a big reason is because that's how I got to the place that I am now with being alcohol free, is that I read someone's story. I heard them tell their story, on a podcast. And I felt like, oh my gosh, they're telling my story too. So that's exactly the reason why I write about it and talk about it and do interviews and things like this, just to keep that moving and try to kind of end that stigma of alcohol in our lives. So
who was it and what podcast was it?
Her name is Katie Bickle, and she's a writer. She's mostly nonfiction, fiction writer. She's from Canada, and I just had read a blog that she wrote for Scary Mommy, the website, the publication. And so that's kind of that's the end of my story. So I'll start at the beginning. Okay. We'll get there. Yeah. But yeah, so the beginning for me, I guess like I was thinking about kind of how to start this today. And I usually start, when I started drinking was, being like 16, 17 in high school, just, kind of inquisitive about alcohol, like a lot of people are, and just trying it with people because their friends do it and trying to fit in. But I do remember alcohol being in my life, like when I was younger, maybe elementary age. And I'm not as far, I wasn't drinking at that point, but I remember like my dad drinking, and we would go fishing and with his friends, he'd, be out drinking. And so I remember being in like bars and things like, and, bar and grills, restaurants and stuff like that when I was much younger. But I never really, I don't know how I thought about it back then because I don't remember, but like right now, I don't have any like ill feelings about like alcohol as a very young child. Even in like high school, I don't have any like memory of it being like a super negative like point of our family, even though my dad did have a problem with it, similar to the one that I did. It still wasn't a huge thing for our family, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
yes.
Yeah, I started drinking when I was like 16 or 17 in high school. Even then I had moments of like too much, you know, where I would just drink way too much, get really sick. But I think I felt like it was just what you did, you know, like other people were getting sick too. Nobody really knows how to drink when you're 16, you know, you don't know like how to mix drinks or what. Like at one point I remember mixing like tequila with like Gatorade, which is something you would never do, obviously. Right?
I'm having
that did not end well.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks of a house party I went to in college where we called it jungle juice, and it was in a trash can, and it was bright red, and I got it all over a perfectly white pea coat. But like, yeah, we used to drink that stuff. Ugh.
Yeah. And so it was like whatever you could get your hands on, you know? So yeah, lots of just like learning, I guess, about alcohol. And then, you know, I played basketball, so it was pretty easy to get caught drinking in high school where I grew up, which I did one time, at least once that I can remember. But I didn't drink a ton in high school. I wouldn't say I was like part of like the partying crowd. That more happened when I got to college. And, you know, my first time being away from home, we're 18. We find somebody who can buy us booze. And I was around all the people that I met. We lived in like this apartment building that was only for the college students. It was a community college, but it was still like only college students in this like apartment building. And so everybody that I met right there, that's what we were all ready to do. You know, we were all ready to hit it hard, and we did. And just your typical like college binge drinking parties, any night of the week, any day, you know, not really going to class that much, like just trying to get by, like dropping classes if I had to, things like that, you know, like just having fun. And of course, like negative consequences then too. But it wasn't anything that I felt like was out of the ordinary for my age, you know, between 18 and like maybe 20, 21 even. And we didn't, you know, go to a lot of bars. I think I got a fake ID when I was like 20, right before I turned 21. I went to a university and somebody got me a fake ID, and I'm like 6'1". And the girl's ID it was like she was like 5'4" or something. But it worked, right?
That's so funny because I have not thought about my fake ID that I definitely had. I have probably like that. I totally, I know. I wish I still had it, but like that is like so far out of my memory, and I hadn't thought of it until you just said it then. And mine was so bad. It was like on one of those fake card, like the kind of card that you use at like the arcade, like that is definitely not the same kind of card as a driver's license. And
mine was like someone's ID that like they just didn't need anymore or something. So like somebody gave it to me, like, here, let's use this to get it. And it was like a college drinking town, so they didn't care.
Right.
But so I turned 21 and hit up the bars just as hard as I would hit up, you know, house parties and things like that. It was just like party life. Like that was number one. And I would have these jobs. I was still in college. It took me 6 years to get a bachelor's degree. And so throughout that time, it was just like partying was at the top, like having fun was at like the top of my list. It wasn't school. It wasn't like how I can like, I wasn't looking to the future, like what career I was going to have or, you know, no relationships were serious. It was just about having fun. And I had found my group of friends. Many of them I still have today. Like my close group of friends is a lot of the people that I met when I was 18, that first college, you know, that I went to. So anyways, lots of, again, negative consequences, blacking out all the time. But back then it was funny. It was like funny in college. It was how do we get home? You know, like, what did we eat when we got home? Oh, we went through the drive-through. Who drove? Oh, you drove? You don't remember driving? Like just scary stuff now if you think about it. But that was normal for us. And I thought that was normal because that's all I ever knew when it came to partying and drinking. Like I thought that everybody did that. And I thought it was weird if people didn't do that, you know?
Right.
And so when I was 25, I had just met my husband, maybe like 6 months before, and I got a DUI on a Tuesday evening. And leaving the bar, my friend was driving and he was like, oh, I'm really drunk. I can't drive. And I was like, I'll drive. And I made it not even probably a minute. I mean, they had to have been watching me. So I went to jail for 2 nights for that because I blew so high and I had to wait for court. So I went to jail. And that was a really bad experience. I mean, I was like in handcuffs, in a jumpsuit, in a courtroom, attached to somebody else. Like, here's my dad sitting in the courtroom. Like, this wasn't just like you get a DUI and someone comes and picks you up. Like I was in jail, you know, for 2 nights. Like I kind of just kept to myself, but it was in the moment, it was really bad. I got out. And then it was funny. You know, it was like, guess how high I blew. Oh, you got one too. Like it was just a joke, you know? And a lot of the things that happened to me that were really bad, like even up until I quit drinking, it was really bad in the moment. And it was kind of like, just get through it, get through the moment. And then afterwards, kind of like even forget that it happened. Like, even if these moments where I'm like, married and, you know, we have a fight and like, I just have to deal with it the next morning. And then I can kind of like forget that it even happened. Yeah. And that's kind of what kept me going with drinking. And like, even though I was having these negative consequences, I was still drinking. Like I didn't think like, I didn't care to stop drinking, you know, that was never like on my radar that I didn't want to. Like, I wasn't like wondering what the problem was. Like clearly the problem was alcohol, but like, I wasn't concerned about it. I was just like, this is how I drink and this is what's going to happen. And so, ER visits, you know, hospital visits, things like that, falling a lot, just fighting with whoever, my husband, just doing dumb stuff. Right. And then, my husband does not drink, which is another layer.
Did he ever drink?
No, he got really sick when he was really young, maybe like 18 or something. And then just hasn't really drank since. So he doesn't drink at all. But he always thought that my drinking he knew my drinking was a little much, but he knew like this partying life was kind of normal because a lot of his friends were in that same kind of like life. And his friends were always partying too. And so he was always in around that life. And so he thought everything I was doing wasn't like that bad. And he really didn't, he would make little rules, but he wouldn't like, totally say like, you need to stop drinking. Or, you know, he would say like, maybe say like, you need to like not drink as much. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd do it again. Like, you know, it wasn't,
Captain.
Right. Like if I don't drink a lot, like what's the point of even drinking? You know, that's my brain. My brain is like, I've never been a person who's like, yeah, I would just love to have like this glass of red wine with my pasta. Like, no, I want the bottle of wine. And then where are we going next? And like, or maybe I'm not even eating because I want to get super drunk. Yeah. And it was always about drinking and getting drunk. And like, that's just the way my brain works. And I didn't know that, you know, I didn't know, I thought that, I guess I knew that that's how I was. And I didn't know that that was the difference between my brain and maybe somebody else's brain who looks at alcohol and has a drink and says, oh yeah, that's great. Whatever, you know, or mine's like, ooh, I want this to keep going until I go to sleep, you know? I don't think it was ever about like emotions, or like feeling down about myself. I could see maybe something being like a little bit of like social anxiety or a little social being uncomfortable and like using that as kind of like a lubricant to like let loose. 'Cause even now, like as a non-drinker, like I'm not going to be out on the dance floor, like at a wedding, like that's just not my thing. And so like I could tell, but a drinking Blair will be out there, you know, she's out there leading the dances and stuff. So it's like totally night and day from what I was to what I am now. But so yeah, when I had my son, I was 30 and quit drinking right away when I, you know, found out I was pregnant, no problems with that. I don't even feel like I thought about it much. I didn't, because I just knew that I couldn't drink. So it wasn't like, I don't even feel like I missed it. Like I didn't even think about it really, which is very interesting. Like maybe subconsciously it was kind of like, oh, nice, this is a break. I don't
Yeah.
have to go through all that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, after I had him, um, and you know, you're a mom, so you understand, but like there's this role, you're a mom now, and like we don't know how to be a mom. You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know how to do it,
You're
right?
just
Like
thrown into
as much as
it.
you can prepare,
Yeah.
yeah, as much as you can prepare for like being a parent, you just don't know until you get there. And I think I had a hard time with the like what I used to who I used to be, and like, okay, now I'm this mom. Can I still be this old person? Can I still be
Mm.
this really fun party person and be a mom? And like how to kind of maneuver those like lifestyles
Yeah.
together, I guess, kind of like mold them together. And, you know, I tried for a little bit. I remember going out for the first time and I had a few drinks and I came home and I was
Mm.
like, oh, I had like bloody and I had beer, you know, and then I was like, I have to get home. And I went home and I was like, oh, I've never done that before. Like, this is new for me. And I did it a few times, you know, but then a lot of the time after I had him, it was more drinking at home by
Mm.
myself. My husband would go out with friends, hang out, whatever. I'd be home with the baby and I would be, you know, I deserve it. I
Mm-hmm.
deserve to have a drink now because I've been with the baby and he's asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I can have a few drinks. And I think I would pretend to have a few drinks, but like it was never just a few
Yeah.
drinks. Like I think it was a lot more like in a shorter period of time
Mm-hmm.
too. Like, cause if you're just sitting at home, you're kind of just unconsciously
Oh yeah.
another drink, another drink, another drink. And it was, yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of how it was after I had him.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, nothing super well. I mean, I was nothing super really, really bad happened after I had him. I lost my purse. You know, that was also like not a uncommon to
Yeah.
lose my purse and lose
Mm-hmm.
phones and like
You have
whatever.
to get your license
Um,
again and
yeah, like cancel your credit card and
mm-hmm.
whatever. Yeah. So like that might have happened like after I had him, but it wasn't I wasn't like going to the ER or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that like after I had him. But just like little arguments and things like that. And I would try to kind of play it off like it wasn't that bad. And by then again, my husband was making these kind of rules like if you're gonna go to somebody's house, stay over there, or I don't want
Mm-hmm.
you home at 2 o'clock in the morning to talk to me, or
Mm.
um he would say like, I don't want to be around you if you're drinking. Like
Mm.
if you're drinking, like you can go with friends, but I'm not going to go or something like that. And like that even wasn't like a red flag to me to be like,
Mm.
oh, my husband doesn't want to be around me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just was like, okay, yeah, okay, bye. Like I'm going to go drink now and hang
Yeah.
out with my friends. Um, but there was one night that I was home by myself with I was with my son who was 18 months at the time, and my husband was out with friends, and I had been drinking, and I tripped over the baby gate and fell and
Mm.
broke a wine glass, shattered the wine glass, red wine everywhere, and I was cleaning it up, and my husband came home while I was, you know, cuts all over my hands, small cuts
Mm.
like from cleaning the wine glass. And another night where like that could have happened any night. Like that's, you know, I broke things before. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
anything super out of the ordinary, but that next morning I woke up and I was you know, bruised, and also not uncommon, right? To be
Mm.
bruised and not know where you get the bruises and things like that. But um my husband told me, you know, you can't drink anymore with our son in the house when
Mm.
it's just you two.
Mm.
And I think the more I think about it now, I was just thinking about this, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but I think that was like the final, like him saying that to me was like, wow, like it's affecting my son.
Mm.
It was almost like it wasn't even enough to affect my husband. Like I really didn't
Yeah.
care,
Right.
but it was my son. You know, you have a different bond,
Mm.
especially moms with their little boys, you know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that was the kicker, I guess.
Mm.
But you know, I didn't. I was hungover for a couple of days because that's how it was at the time. I was kind
Mm.
of like a weekend drinker, and then I would be hungover. Like I was like a Friday night drinker, and
Mm.
then it would be 2 days of hangover, maybe a little bit of emotional hangover on Monday. You know,
Yeah.
like still like, why can't I drink? Why can't I just have a couple drinks, or
Mm.
drink and be okay, or stop it? Like, could I just stop at like one bottle of wine?
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was the same story again. And that Monday at work, I was sitting at my office and I read a blog on Scary Mommy about a
Mm-hmm.
mom who doesn't drink. And it was like it was a story about something that she had dealt with. And I looked her up and I I can't remember the name of the podcast. Tammy Salas.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
know who
Oh,
she had?
the Unruffled podcast. Yeah.
Unruffled. I think that's where I heard um, Katie Bickle speak about
Okay.
her story and things like that. So she told her story, and I was like, oh my gosh, same kind of thing. Like, didn't drink every day, didn't lose her job, things like that. And it wasn't like this, you hear the story of like somebody who has to go to rehab and they lose their career and they end up homeless and they're on the street and like all these things. And that just wasn't my story. And so once I heard her say that, I was like, wow, that is my story. Like, you're telling my story. You have quit drinking. Alcohol was the problem. You removed it. And now you're living like this amazing life. So I end up messaging her on Facebook. I like typed her name into Facebook, messaged her, wrote her this long, I think it's like 900 words. I still have it. I'm going to publish it at some point, I think. But like this really long cry for help, basically. And she wrote back within, minutes and was like, well, you don't have to drink anymore.
Yeah.
And no one had ever said that. I'd never even thought of that. Right. I never even thought like that it was an option to just not drink anymore. It seems so simple. Right. And so simple now, even like here 4 years out. But like, yeah, that was it. Like, that was like her like telling me that it was okay to just not drink anymore. Like, you don't have to keep trying to manage it because you can't. And, I had enough proof. Of like how I drank. Every single time it was the same thing. It wasn't like, oh, maybe this time it would be better. No, it was like too much, blacking out, regret. It was like this cycle for my son was 18 months old. So probably the worst of it was after I had him. But yeah, so she gave me resources, much like I do today, like podcasts and books. And I read This Naked Mind right away. That was the first book that I read, and it changed my life. And I haven't drank since. That was the last time I drank, that night that I spilt the wine. And here we are.
What's your alcohol-free date? Do you count?
I count I have an app on my phone. I look at it just for fun every once in a while, but February 26th, 2018. So I don't go by the last day I drink because I didn't think even that I would quit. I didn't think about it the next day. It was like 2 days later that I thought about it. So I go by that day, the day that I decided.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because I'm trying to think. I don't know that we've had anybody on the podcast yet who wasn't a daily drinker.
Yeah.
And then decided to quit.
Right.
And I think that that's a really interesting perspective of like, you are not necessarily physically addicted to the substance. You're not physically dependent on this substance. But in our brains, we want to continue to make this work. We want to continue to make a substance work because we're socialized to. It's in our social life. It's ingrained in our culture. But tell me, so like, I'm like trying to like wrap my head around this because like for me, it was always like day one. This is day one without alcohol. And like getting one day under my belt was really, 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 really hard. And to like, even imagine a world where I could just drink on like Fridays, but it would still wreck my week and then opt out. So I think my question here is I'm like all over the place, but I think my question is like, how did you put the pieces together? Like what Katie Bickle said, like, you just don't have to drink. How did you organize that in your thought process and like realize like, oh wait, I don't have to drink. I can just opt out of this. What did that like look like in practice when you decided to officially be done?
Yeah, I was really scared when she said that because I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I had been drinking regularly since I was 18, let's just say. Maybe, when I was pregnant, obviously I didn't drink, but like then maybe a month or two after I got my DUI, maybe I didn't drink. So like, otherwise it was at least every other week, or at least every weekend, at least, you know, more when I was younger. But yeah, the biggest thing for me was like socializing and social events. I was worried about like the bachelorette party that was coming up, or the you know, it was February when I quit, so I was worried about summer that was coming up, and like all these things. And she just told me, like, don't worry about those things, just worry about today. So there is a part of that one day at a time, you know, where I was you know, just getting through. And it was easy. I want to say it was easy for me to get through the regular days, right? So it was a Monday when I quit. It was easy for me to get through to Friday. And then it was like, okay, how am I going to not drink on Friday? Okay, well, we get all the alcohol out of the house. There wasn't any in the house. My husband, you know, I drank it all, first of all.
Yeah.
Well, my husband doesn't drink. So I didn't have that like pressure, which was super nice. Like that is something I'm very thankful for. And I know many people do not have that luxury of having a spouse or someone in their house that doesn't drink. So that made it really easy. I don't know. So you know, you say, oh, I'm never drinking again, like, right, when you're hungover. And I never really meant it, obviously. It was just a joke. But I waited, and I have a hard time not telling my husband everything. We're best friends. So like, it's just like really hard. So I think I waited like a week to tell him that I wasn't drinking anymore, because I didn't think that he would believe me. And he, you know, he'll say now too, he was like, okay, we'll see it when it happens, you know? And I think I waited a little, I don't know how long, maybe it had to have been less than a month. I would have probably seen my friends again. But I remember having two of my close friends over just to hang out or watch a movie. And I just kind of blurted it out. I was like, I'm not drinking anymore. Like really just super awkward. Like I quit drinking. You know, like just to get it out, just to say it. And they're like, okay. And at that point, I think I had bought a few books, and I had looked, you know, listened to some podcasts. And so I got a little bit of confidence. But it was those big things of like telling the people around me, going to the events, like those were hard. But just the more of them I did, it got easier. You know, it's just ripping the Band-Aid off, doing the thing. Once you go to one wedding, you kind of know what to expect. And so I've also realized after quitting that I am much more of an introvert than I thought I was. I mean, I used to be like the one dancing on the bars and doing all the things, like yelling, like making friends with everybody, you know, like buying everybody drinks because you think that they're going to like you for that. But like, no, like now I want nothing to do with large groups of people. Like, don't come to my house unannounced. Like, if you want to cancel our plans, that's fine. Like, I'm fine with that, you know? So like, that's been a huge change. But it's also like, did I ever really like doing that? You know, I don't know. Who's to know? Because I've been doing it since I was 18. So I don't know. But it just made me more like out of my shell. But like, I just like, I don't care. I don't need to be out of my shell. Like, I don't want to. I like my shell. My shell keeps me safe.
It's very comfortable in this shell.
Yeah.
I hear that experience a lot from people who are like, I quit drinking and I discovered I don't enjoy spending time with people. I quit drinking and I discovered I'm an introvert. I quit drinking. I discovered that like I'm emotionally drained by spending time and energy in social settings. Or like, also I've like, I have a theory, and I have no science to back this up, but I think a lot of us are, I'm finding more people are recognizing sensory sensitivity after they quit drinking. They're like, I didn't realize like noise or like a crowded room, like the audio, visual, sensory experience of that. Like we were just taking the edge off of that with alcohol. And then you realize on the other end of it that like, oh, that actually makes me feel really anxious or really drained or really exhausted. And so I think it's kind of a common experience to quit drinking and being like, oh wait, I'm like so happy being on my couch. Like, please cancel our plans.
Yes.
I'm going to stay in this shell. I think
that's so interesting that you say about the sensory stuff, because I wonder, there has to be some science. We should look that up. There has to be some science to that, because I am very sensitive to sounds and noise, and it has probably something to do with, we were numbing everything. So we never really had those sensations before. And now that we're almost feeling them for the first time.
Well, so I truly have so many theories about this because I think
Yeah.
you and I, our generation, I've got a 3 and a 6-year-old, and my
Mm-hmm.
3-year-old is sensitive to noise, and we are exploring what that means for him to be able
Right.
to show up the best in the world. And we have a lot of different language and different modalities and different support for
Mm-hmm.
kids in
Yes.
2022 who experience sensory difficulties that I think weren't around when you and I were kids. So I'm like Charlie Day with my map and all the
Yeah.
pins and all my red
Yes.
lines
Yep.
everywhere
I know exactly what
of
you're talking about.
of like adults who probably should have been diagnosed with sensory disorder are like
Yeah.
more prone to substance abuse or like
Anxiety, and then
yeah.
you have everything in there. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
are you an oldest daughter too, because that's also
I'm
part
an
of my
only, I'm a kind of
okay.
an only child. Well, I'm an only child between my parents. I have
Okay.
a much older half siblings, but I
Okay.
grew up, which is another thing of
Mhm.
mine, is
Mhm.
like very selfish. And I'm
Mm.
still, the thing is, like, I was very selfish when I was drinking, you know?
Mm.
Um, and I kind of always got what I wanted, but I
Yeah.
still do that. Like,
Mm.
my husband will tell you, like, I still try to get whatever I want, but I'm selfish now with my time,
Mm.
and like I'm selfish like with my comfort, and I think
Yeah.
the comfort thing is like so sensory related too. Like
Mm.
um immediately when I get home, like I have to dress business casual at work, right? When I
Mhm.
walk in the door, I walk to my room and change into my sweatpants. Like I don't
Mm.
sit down. I take my makeup off. Put my hair up. Like
Bra off.
yeah, just like comfort,
Yeah.
comfort. And
Yeah.
so it's I don't know if it's I'm uncomfortable in certain clothes or what. I mean, I feel fine when I'm at work, dressed up, whatever, but like I'm dressed up as like black pants and whatever
Mm.
sweater I can pull off, the hanger, but I'm not like wearing blazers and like
Mm.
whatever. But yeah, it's totally got to be a thing, and we should probably look into that.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to exclude you from my eldest daughter study, but I will
Okay. Okay.
include you in all of my other hypotheses. But
Okay.
but I want to like revisit this idea of like being selfish with your time and your
Yeah.
comfort, because I think one of the things that I have learned on the other side of quitting drinking is like what makes me feel good is valid,
Mm-hmm.
and what makes me feel good is worth prioritizing,
Mm-hmm.
because I had spent so much of my life appeasing other people, making everybody else's comfort a priority, saying yes to
Mm-hmm.
things I didn't want to do, and at the expense of my nervous system, at the expense of my body battery, my ability to get through the day without being totally burnt out. So I just want to
Mm-hmm.
like put a little like
Yeah.
asterisk on that, because I don't think it's
Yep.
selfish. I think it is in preservation of your ability to
Yeah.
stay alcohol free, or
Yeah.
your verbiage of choice.
Yeah.
So
Good
I
selfish. It's
good
good
selfish.
selfish.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
good selfish. We'll like
Yeah.
trademark that. Good selfish. We're gonna run with that. I think it's interesting when you talk about being pregnant and that not being a
Yeah.
difficult time not to drink. And I hear that a lot. And every
Mhm.
single person, every single woman who tells me this, they're like surprised by it. Like they're like, the one and only time my entire life that it wasn't
Yeah.
hard not to drink was the time that I was pregnant. And
Mhm.
my other theory for this is like it there's something to be said about you deciding after talking to Katie Bickle that you were not going to drink anymore. And there's
Yeah.
something to be said about like being pregnant and it's just not even on the table anymore. Like taking it off the table and removing it from
Yes.
even being an option, I have found in my own experience and in the women I work with, like it's this idea of like never question the decision and QTD. This idea of like removing it from even being a possibility
Mhm.
suddenly lifts this weight and makes it suddenly just like a
Yes.
little bit easier to hold, because it's just not even an option. It's not even on the table. So I'm like,
Right.
I hear that often, this idea of I was pregnant and it wasn't a problem. And I wonder what that was. But for me, it's like we take it off the table. And I think we can
Mhm.
use that when we are working to remove this substance from our life in other ways of just like, this is no, we're going to like pretend like we're in 9 months of pregnancy. We're going to remove this
Right.
from the
Right.
equation. It's not even part of the conversation. So I think one of the other things I hear from you is that like you didn't have a traditional rock bottom. And I think that's
Right.
really important for people to hear, especially
Mm-hmm.
because you had all of these other experiences and markers
Right.
of what somebody might consider a rock bottom. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it was when your husband said like you
Mm-hmm.
can't drink with the baby alone, that felt like the linchpin to making this choice for yourself?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't, feel that it was, I think it was like a mixture of things. I feel it like it was that, him saying that. And then I feel like it was this cycle of, like I said, Friday and then 2 hangover days, physical, 2 emotional hangover days,
Mm,
a few days of just fine. And then it's Friday again. And it's like
mm,
this cycle that I was in while I had the baby. Right. And, in addition to reading that blog on that day,
mm,
like I honestly don't know if I didn't read that blog on that day that I would have
mm.
quit drinking that day. I don't
Yeah.
know that I would have, because I didn't have any access. I wasn't searching for stories.
Mm,
I wasn't sober curious ever.
mm,
It was never in my brain to like maybe quit drinking. Like
mm.
that wasn't an option. It was just like, how can I keep drinking and hope for the best?
Yeah.
Like when every single time was the same thing. I mean, of course, there were times where like I drank and I passed out, nothing happened, right? Like
Mm,
it wasn't like, this whole thing every single time, but I drank the same way. It was
mm,
too much, blacking out, binge drinking, regret, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think something just clicked. I don't
mm.
know.
Well,
What you said about, yeah, go ahead.
that makes sense about like it had to be all three. It wasn't just
Right.
one
It's a
experience. It
trifecta.
had to be well, but I think that is the case for a lot of people. The
Yeah.
stars need to be aligned in a way that makes something click for your brain to be like, oh, we just opened a new door. This is like
Right.
a new pathway that we have the potential to walk through. So
Right.
you quit drinking. You said, I'm not drinking. You talked to your friends at movie night and blurted this out, told your
Yeah.
partner. He was like, yeah, okay. What kept you alcohol free? What was it that you found on the other side of it that said,
Yeah.
okay, this is the right choice?
Well, what you said about the relationship or the comparison between being pregnant and just deciding, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's what it was. It was, I, in my brain, turned some switch that it's no more, it's not an option anymore.
Hmm.
It has to be none. Because I think I knew that I couldn't like try to moderate for a little bit. Like I just knew that I couldn't do that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I just knew that wasn't who I was.
Hmm.
So it's either you keep doing what you're doing or you quit entirely. Those are my two
Hmm.
options, right? And so, um, yeah, it just had to be none. And so that's what I tell people too. I'm like, I just made it a non-option, and I
Hmm.
and I just accepted acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Accepting that I can no longer drink alcohol if I want to like be any other way than what I've been dealing with.
Hmm.
But what was your question? I don't know what you said.
I mean, like what keeps you sober all these years
Keep
later?
going.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same thing. I just know
Yeah.
that I mean, like my husband and I were talking not too long ago, and we said, yeah, I could probably drink today. I could go down to the store and get alcohol any day of the week. Any of us could go get it. It's
Mm-hmm.
right there. It's not like we have to go find an alcohol dealer on the street. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's easy to get. Like
Yeah.
it's at every store that I go to almost these days.
Part of its thing.
Um, yep. And so I just know that I can't.
Hmm.
Even if um, what I was saying, like my husband and I were talking, like I could go do that and I
Yeah.
could drink and I might be okay for a little bit. Like I
Mm-hmm.
might be able to have a few, but I would never want to.
Mm.
Like physically outside of me, I could be drinking and have 2 beers and be done. But my brain would be like, oh, but I really want the
Yeah.
rest of them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really want more. And that's too much. That's
Yeah.
too much for me. I don't want to
Mm.
deal with that. You know what I mean?
I had Jill Teets of Sober Powered on the podcast a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago, and she had a quote that made me laugh, but was also very relatable. It was two drinks will always be a waste of time for me. And I'm like, yeah, that's also how my brain is. Like, 2 drinks is a waste of time. What are we doing here? What's the point? And I think it, goes back to that cliche of like, if you can't just have one, then have none. Sometimes is the easier option. And when you say like that was too much already, that thought of like, I could have 2 and then I would be thinking about more. That's too much alone, I think is really powerful, because that's precious, precious brain energy that as moms, like, we already have diminished brain capacity.
I'm not willing to give my brain energy to that. I've got too much else to going on,
and I think that's one of the thing. I don't know exactly like what my personal philosophy on moderation for the general public is. I haven't like formed a consensus on that. I know moderation is not an option for me, but this idea of how much brain power we are wasting in the world thinking about drinking, thinking about moderating our drink, thinking about, are we drinking more than somebody else? Are we, all the brain power we're wasting recovering from drinking? It's like, what could we accomplish if all of these people just decided,
didn't do that.
if we just didn't do that. And, I think that talking about like, there's so many other things that I want to do with my time than to waste my mental capacity on this. And there's so many worthwhile experiences. And I, were you a writer before you quit drinking?
I was a writer as like a child.
Okay.
So as a youth.
So that's
but we always go back to the thing we did, right? Before we stopped drinking. And I was very creative when I was younger, making videos and slideshows and all this stuff. And then I did none of that while I was drinking. It was just drinking. Like I didn't, you could have asked me like what my hobby was, and I would have been like hanging out with friends and drinking. Like, it wasn't, there were no hobbies. I did, the funny thing is I did apply to be a writer for this blog in my city while I was drinking. And I didn't really have a good angle because I didn't have anything cool about myself, and then I didn't get in. And then after I quit drinking, it was about a year, not even a year and a half, about a year and a half, I suppose, that I had been alcohol free. I applied again. And then my angle was that I am an alcohol free mom. Like there's not that many of us out there willing to talk about it and things like that. So I got accepted then, so like, it's like this kind of full circle thing. And I still, write for that Rochester Mom, it's called, in my city now. So,
well, and so that's what I'm thinking. Like, I think about all of that brain power now that you can divert to writing and to sharing your storytelling and your words, and to bring it full circle. You got published in Scary Mommy, right?
I did 3 years. It was right around the 3-year mark of quitting drinking that I submitted a piece about how that Scary Mommy blog helped me change my life, and they accepted it.
Wow.
And then it was like, the circle is now closed. Like,
the circle has been closed. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is the moment that I realized like, oh, wow, I could do this writing thing and I could like write in these big publications or whoever, and so ever since then is when I started it up a little bit more. Yeah. And that's only been since 2020, maybe. No.
What is time? Who knows?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of brain capacity. But it hasn't been.
Yeah, right. And now we still have no brain capacity because we fill it with other things. It's not like, we quit drinking and now we have all this free space. Well, we do for a little bit. It's like a little bit of time you have this free space, and it feels very freeing is what I wanted to add to your, like, the not having to think about drinking, the not having to like think about how many I'm having, who's watching me, like, are they going to judge me? What's it going to be like tomorrow? Like, that's just not having to do that is just so freeing. There's so much freedom in that. And it's something I'm just like so proud of too. Like, let's talk about how like big of a deal it is for us to just say like, we're not going to drink in this society where like, that's what you do. Yeah. And it's everywhere. And it's a huge deal.
It's a huge deal. Yeah. Amen. It's a huge deal. Title of the podcast. It's a huge deal. love when I see a woman who quits drinking and then starts to do something impactful in the world. And I think your writing is really impactful. And
Thank
the
you.
ripple effect that that has and the doors that it opens for other people is so powerful. And you know, one of the things that was hard for me when I first quit drinking is I never felt like I was powerless. Powerless felt like verbiage that didn't fit and verbiage that certainly didn't excite me. And I have decided since then that I believe it's really powerful to make this
I was going to
choice.
say that. Yeah, it's actually powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
To decide that for yourself.
Yeah. And so I love when I see a woman reclaim her power and share that with the world. So I love your writing. The last question I ask every podcast is, if your story were to be written and it were to be made into a book, what would it be titled and what kind of story is it?
Well, I have thought about this a little bit after knowing that was going to be asked.
Yeah.
I always say that like quitting drinking, it really for me was kind of like finding this, like the secret to my life, right? So something like The Secret to My Life would be the title of my book, The Secret to Life or something like that. Because I really feel like it's this secret that like not everybody knows about. And like, we're kind of lucky, you know, we are the luckiest, as Laura McCowan says. I really believe that, like we're really lucky to be able to do the one thing, you know, we did this one thing and it's changed our entire lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more.
And it'd probably just be me writing about things that happen in my life. That's what the book would be about. But
yeah, no, I totally agree with you though. I think that like this is the one thing that has given me everything else in my life.
Yeah.
And it's this secret club I didn't know I ever wanted to be a part of. And it has changed literally everything about my life. So I love that. I look forward to reading it because I know someday we'll see you on the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we're gonna manifest that in the world for you.
Okay.
But Blair, thank you so much for your story today, for coming and sharing these candid experiences and giving a perspective that I think a lot of people are going to hear and realize, oh, wait, I can just opt out. I don't have to keep on this hamster wheel, even though I'm not a daily drinker, even though this isn't something that, you know, people in my life are telling me. I have the opportunity to just opt out.
Right.
And I think that's really powerful. So thank you so much for your time today, Blair. I know our people are going to want to find you. They're going to want to connect with you. How can they, what do you got going in your world?
Yeah. So I do have a website. That's kind of where I put all my like interviews and my writing, a lot of my writing there. And that's just blairsharp.com. And then on Instagram, it's Sobriety Activist is where I hang out the most. I just started writing on Medium last week, actually.
Wow.
So you can find me there.
Beautiful. All right. Well, and before we go, tell us what sobriety activist means to you. I meant to ask that during the interview.
So try to say this in a concise way, but well, it all began with the Tropicana mimosa campaign, Take a Moment. They were promoting, you know, to parents that you can hide in your closet and drink this orange juice and champagne. We'll give you this mini fridge, blah, blah, blah. And so someone in an article somewhere after that whole thing got shut down said that they called the people, you know, us, this Instagram, this is before I had this account, but like sobriety activists is what they called us.
Hell yeah, we were.
The people that were posting about it and commenting and sharing and getting this campaign got taken down within like 2 days.
Yeah.
And so I read that article and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a sobriety activist. And I immediately like got the handle and like was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but like, you know, whatever, I have it. And then I just started using it as a place to post about being alcohol free. Cause you know, I've had a personal Instagram. Nobody really wants to hear about that all the time. Like the regular, you know, everyday people in your life don't really care. But yeah, I mean, well, it surprised me because I did share it right away too with my whole, like my friends and family, right? And like immediately like 60 people started following me that like were in my real life. So that tells you a little something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what it is. And it's kind of evolved since. And now it's just post every day just about, and just funny and supportive things. So
I love that. I love that origin story because I do remember
yeah.
the Tropicana Gate
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
all of the things that came with that. Man, we could do like a whole
Yeah.
different podcast episode about Trump.
I
Maybe I'll get
know.
Gabrielle Union on the
Oh
podcast to get
yeah.
her side of
Molly
it. And
Sims.
yeah, Molly Sims. Yeah, we can have like a round table and be like, all right, babes, let's talk about how this went down.
Right. Yeah.
But Blair, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on the
Yeah.
podcast and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.